Hi, my name's Andy McClellan. I'm Head of Public Engagement here at the Pitt Rivers Museum. I'm 192 centimetres tall, which in old money is 6'1". I've got dark hair. I am of medium build, I would say. Other people might call me a bit bigger than that. I'm wearing a blue jacket and a blue shirt and beige jeans. I've been involved in the Beyond the Binary project, and I think it's really changed the way the museum is thinking. Quite often in museums, we choose to tell one story, and all museums tell the same stories. And actually, there's a lot of different stories out there, and Beyond the Binary has been an opportunity to tell some of the stories that have not been told in this space before. So the first object I'm going to show you is a Javanese shadow puppet. It's in a case on the middle floor of the Pitt Rivers Museum, and it's in a case with lots of other shadow puppets from Thailand and China and different parts of the world. The puppet I'm talking about is a figure called Sri Candy, and it's sitting at the bottom of the case and is made from buffalo skin. When I think of that puppet, it appears to be made of cardboard and looks really delicate, but actually it's incredibly strong when you hold it, and it's quite rough to the touch. It's got very long, thin arms and a solid body. It appears to be a female figure wearing a dress and a blouse, and it has long, extended fingers and feet very close together. It's got the head slightly downturned with a long, quite pointed nose and thin almond-shaped eyes. And in Java, that kind of character is perceived to be aloof, and aloof is calm, and aloof is what you aspire to be. So it's a beautiful puppet, and the almond-shaped eyes and the downturned face show that the puppet is in control of what's going on around it. The puppet has lots of holes punched through the leather, so that when you hold it up, the light goes through the puppet and makes beautiful patterns onto a screen behind it. The sticks that are holding the arms and the legs are made from stretched water buffalo horn. The figure is wearing traditional Javanese clothes, so it's a sarong in patterns of dark green, light green, and flecks of yellow and white, and the blouse is in the same colour. And the figure itself, the skin is painted gold, so it really stands out, almost glows in the area. When I think of no binaries in relation to this puppet, I'm not necessarily thinking about LGBT stories, because Javanese shadow puppets are made in Indonesia, the most populous Muslim country in the world, and they're used to tell ancient Hindu epic stories. And in these times when we often see religion as being very polarized, what the Indonesian shadow puppets can show is a cultural appreciation and assimilation of different religious heritages and stories. And it's a wonderful kind of coming together of cultures. So that's one of the non-binary stories. Now, in the Mahabharata, Sri Candy is born as a woman and then becomes a man. And that's an important statement about the history of third genders within non-Western cultures. We often look at gender through a Western eye, but the rest of the world doesn't necessarily see it that way. So historically, within Indian culture and Indian stories, there is a third gender, and Sri Candy can represent that. It's also interesting that within Java, where the wayang kulit shadow puppets are really culturally important, they're often one of the few ways of telling political stories or political satire. And Sri Candy, as a puppet that starts as woman and ends up as man, becomes a symbol of transgender politics within contemporary Java. So we have these multi-layers of stories around Sri Candy that makes this a truly non-binary figure. The object I'm going to talk about is the witch in a bottle. The witch in a bottle is in a case on the ground floor of the Pitt Rivers. It sits alongside other objects to do with the evil eye, and opposite a case on witchcraft. Now, we don't know very much about this witch in a bottle. We know what it says on the label, and the label says, collected in 1915 from an old lady living in Hove in Sussex, and she said, they do say there be a witch in it, and if you open it up, you'll get a peck of trouble. Collected in 1915 by Margaret Murray. We have nothing else in our database about it, so all we can do is really conjecture about what this object might be and what it might really have been. Now, that works very well for visitors coming into the museum because it allows them to impose their own stories and their own thoughts onto this object. But how the museum chooses to display it also imposes some kind of story onto it. So just slightly further down, in I think 2 cases further down, are some German stoneware bottles that were originally beer bottles, and they are known as witch bottles, and we know exactly what those are because we've opened them up and we've looked inside. And through the 18th century, they were used particularly in London and Norfolk and areas like that. And you put often some urine, some pins, something made of steel, and burnt things inside. You seal it up and you put it under your doorstep, or you put it in the wall of your house, and it's a protection against witchcraft. And they're known as Bellamines. But this bottle isn't that. It doesn't look like that. And the witch bottles are generally all about the same. So if this isn't that kind of bottle, what is it? So does it really have a witch in it? Well, we've never opened it, so we don't actually know. I have picked it up. I'm one of the few people who've held it. So when people are looking at this, we're thinking about often, if it's people coming in from a British cultural heritage, going to be thinking about how we consider witchcraft in this country, which will be about kind of TV programs or films that include witches. But for other people, it represents a kind of anti-Christian view of the past and an othering, that witches were people that sat outside society. They're the people that didn't fit. They're the people who'd done something that meant they were accused of wrongdoing and might get burnt at the stake or dipped in the pool or excluded from society in some way. And we know that quite often, the people who were excluded in that way were women, either because they didn't fit because they were now too old, or they didn't fit because there was something about them that didn't fit society's norms, and that was often around gender or sexuality. So the idea of witches, for quite a lot of people, is about that othering, about the fact that they don't belong in society, and that has created a strong link between LGBT communities, and particularly lesbians, and the idea of witchcraft. And this witch in a bottle can represent that story, and that's one of the non-binary stories that can be told about the witchcraft objects from the UK that exist in that area of the museum. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that both Mara and I chose to talk about the witch in a bottle, and I think we've chosen to talk about it in quite different ways. And I think that really illustrates that importance of having different perspectives and different voices within the museum, because each one of us brings a slightly different view and a slightly different angle. I was also really pleased to see that one of the artists we work with, Sarah Joy Ford, responded to The Witch in a Bottle in an art piece that they made to go into the exhibition, which is an embroidered cover with images of all sorts of objects from the museum, and quite prominent on it is the witch in a bottle.